Why are there so many commandments in the Torah?
The question as to why the Torah contains so many mitzvot, 613 mitzvot, commandments, is addressed in the Mishnah, which is the concise formulation of the essentials of the oral tradition, the Torah Sheba'al Peh. At the end of Masechet Makoth, we find the following statement. Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia Omer. The Chacham Rabbi Hananiah, son of Akashia, stated, Rasa hamakom lezakot et Yisrael. The Hashem, known as the place, referred to in this Mishnah as the place, we will explain this in a moment, wished to increase the possibility of merit, the possibility of spiritual connection to Hashem. And therefore he increased and multiplied the number of mitzvot in the Torah. The number of commandments is very great, precisely to allow that connection to flourish. Lefichach hirba lahem Torah mitzvot. That is why the Torah is so broad and deep and covers all aspects of human existence. As the Pasuk states, Adonai hafes lema'an sidko yagdil Torah uyadir, which means that it is precisely because Hashem wished to increase the possibility to create a reality for the Jewish people in which they would be able to be in constant contact, connection with Hashem, that they would at all times find themselves involved in something which connects them, which reminds them of Hashem, causes them to feel this connection. Precisely for that reason, the Torah is so broad in its scope and contains so many details, so many specific commandments. Let us first of all address the terminology, the precise, authentic terminology of the Mishnah. The Mishnah states that Hashem, who is not referred to as Hashem in this Mishnah, nor is he referred to, as appears in many versions of this text, as Ha-Kadosh Baruch Hu, or even Ha-Kodesh Baruch Hu, which is a more accurate, more authentic version of that terminology, referring to Hashem. Here, an even more ancient terminology is used, and that is Ha-Makom Baruch Hu, literally the place. Ha-Makom means the place. This is an ancient, authentic term used by the Hachamim, used by the sages to refer to Hashem. The reason why this term is applied to Hashem is actually mentioned in the Talmud Yerushalmi, despite the fact that in the Talmud Yerushalmi before us, as it appears before us, this is not mentioned at all, because the last part of this particular Masechet, this tractate, Masechet of Makoth, does not appear in the usual texts and editions of the Talmud Yerushalmi, nor is this term explained in the Talmud Bavli, in the Babylonian Talmud. However, a lost part of the Talmud Yerushalmi was published in the academic journal called Tarbitz in Shana Yod Zayin, the 17th year of its publication. And there, from the Geniza fragments of the Talmud Yerushalmi, found the following statement. Was found the following statement, which is also quoted, it should be noted, by the Rashbats, Rabbeinu Shimon ben Semah, the great posek, halachic decisor, and commentator towards the end of the period of the Rishonim, of the medieval commentators and decisors. And in his commentary on Masechet Avot, at the end of the 5th perek, he also quotes this statement. In other words, we see from this that the Rashbats had, in the Yerushalmi before him, he actually had this text. The explanation of this terminology, Hamakom, the place, referring to Hashem, in the Yerushalmi is as follows. Mipenema mechanim shemo shel hakodesh. That is also an interesting and authentic reading of the text that we have before us. We see here the correct version of that term referring to Hashem as HaKodesh Baruch Hu, or just HaKodesh, that is to say holiness in the abstract sense. Why is Hashem, or Kodesh, referred to as HaMakom, the place? Lomar shehu mekomo shel olamo. He is the place in which his world, that is to say the universe, exists. He made space for the universe to exist. He allowed this other existence, this other reality beyond himself to exist. This is also a central and primal notion discussed at length, both by the ancient Jewish philosophers and also in Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. وَأَنْ عُلَمَاء مِكُمُهُ. The world, the universe, is not his place. It is not where Hashem resides. It is the other way around. The universe resides in that reality, space, both in the physical but also in the existential sense. In that space, in that place and that reality that he allotted, that he created from nothing for the universe to exist in. So states the Yerushalmi. This interpretation and statement of the Talmud Yerushalmi appears also in a number of midrashim, such as the Pesikatha Rabbathi. And there is, by the way, no doubt that the original Girasa, the original reading of this Mishnah, of this last halacha in Masechet Makoth, is Rasa ha-Makom Baruch Hu, and not Rasa ha-Kadosh or ha-Kodesh Baruch Hu, because this is how it appears in the three most reliable complete manuscripts of the Mishnah, the manuscripts known as Kaufman, Parma, and Cambridge. This is also how it appears in many of the Rishonim, many of the medieval commentators, such as the Rashbats that we just mentioned. So it appears in the Piskei Riaz, so it appears in Sefer HaItur and in other sources. As to the question, why was this text changed? Why was it altered? This has to do with the historical transmission of such texts. Frequently, copyists in medieval times and earlier who were copying a text with which they were unfamiliar, where a term appeared which they did not really understand or was not in common parlance, they would allow themselves some kind of poetic license, as it were, to change the terminology, to edit the text so that, at least in their eyes, it would be more comprehensible. And this is most unfortunate, and this is the reason that Rabbeinu Tam, the grandson of Rashi, made a herem, that is to say, he excommunicated all copyists who would change a text that they were copying because it seemed to them incorrect. Because he knew very well, Rabbeinu Tam understood very well, that just as likely that they were in fact correcting a mistake, they may also in fact be removing from the manuscripts a correct and ancient usage which they perhaps did not understand, but others who came later after them would understand. And in this way many texts were corrupted, and this is to be regretted. So back to the question that the Mishnah is addressing. Why are there so many mitzvot, so many commandments? The Rashbas, Rabbi Shimon ben Semach, in his Perush Magen Avot on the Mishnah Masechet Avot, Perek Shalishi, he connects the following statement in Masechet Avot to that which we are discussing now in Masechet Makoth. In Masechet Avot it states, Haviv Adam Shanivra B'Tselem. Humankind has a special place, is looked upon with special fondness by Hashem, because human beings are capable of perceiving and understanding and intuiting many things, many types of information and insight that other creatures, all other living creatures, are not capable of achieving. The Mishnah goes on to state, Hiba Yethera Noda'at lo shenivra b'Tselem. That is why it says with regards to humankind that they are created in the image of God. This ability to understand, to investigate, to think logically, rationally, and also to intuit profound things that are even beyond the realm of straightforward mechanistic logic. These things can be done by human beings, and that is why they have a special place in Hashem's creation. The Mishnah goes on to state, Havivim Yisrael, on top and above this level of humankind is Yisrael, Shenikra'u Banim. Only the Jewish people are referred to as sons of Hashem, as his children, as it states explicitly in Devarim Perek Yud Daled, Deuteronomy chapter 14, Banim atem l'Adonai Elohechem. You are as children to Hashem your Lord. And Am Yisrael have a special place in Hashem's creation. Havivim Yisrael, shenitan lahem keli hemda, shebo nivra ha'olam. And only Am Yisrael merited to receive the Torah, which is, as it were, the key to understanding the universe, to understanding life. That is why it's referred to as a kli hemda, a very precious vessel or object. Hiba Yethera Noda'at lahem, and therefore they have a very special place in Hashem's system and His creation. Shenitan lahem kali hemda shebo nivra ha'olam. It is only they who receive the Torah, and therefore it is only they who received all these miswoth. As we know, according to the Torah, all human beings are required to live in accordance with the 7 Noahide laws, the Sheva Miswoth B'nai Noah in Hebrew, which involve things such as not stealing, murdering, committing adultery, establishing a system of justice, courts where justice is meted out in order to maintain human society in a reasonable and proper fashion. Those kinds of misforth apply to all human beings. However, it is only the Jewish people, referred to in this Mishnah as those who receive the Torah, specifically those who receive the Torah, all of the Torah, and who received also the ability to understand, to delve into the Torah, internalize its message, and create a system, a civilization, a culture which propagates this Torah from generation to generation. Only the Jewish people are obligated to perform, to live by all of the miswot, all of the commandments of the Torah. And this is because the aim of the Torah and the miswot, in the first place, is to connect the person to Hashem. Because the essential question is, what differentiates the human being from any other form of life, from an animal? Animals require sustenance, food, water. So do human beings. An animal doesn't think about the food that it finds, that it eats. It does not occur to an animal to thank Hashem for providing him with that sustenance. Animals require shelter, each in their own way. They require various things. They procreate, and exactly as human beings do as well. So in which way is a human being different? And we all know there are those who claim that human beings are not very different, that they're just another type of animal. And if one lives one's life in that fashion, based on that assumption and based on that outlook, then human life, human affairs, human society deteriorates to the point where it becomes almost like a jungle. the true purpose of the Torah is to create a system whereby a person cannot forget his connection to Hashem. The more mitzvot a person has, the more connection a person has to his Creator, because at every step, in every area of life, when he wakes up, when he goes to work, when a person comes home, when he retires and goes to sleep, in every aspect of his existence, according to the Torah, he is to regulate, he is to take into account the will of Hashem described in the Torah and act in a certain way, not as he would possibly act if he were to simply rely on his own thought or intuition or instinct, but rather to act in a manner which is connected to and informed by the will of Hashem, as described in the Torah. The more mitzvot there are, the more a person is involved in such a way of life, which is constantly referring to, constantly entwined with the Torah and the will of Hashem. And thus, the more a person lives according to the Torah, the less it is possible for him to be oblivious of Hashem. The true difference between a person who lives according to the Torah and a person who does not is to what extent a person exists in a state of awareness of Hashem. Torah is about Hashem awareness, God awareness, being aware of at all times, not being able to forget Hashem at almost any time. The Jewish people were given many mitzvot, as is stated in certain places in the Talmud and the Midrashim. For example, it states in one place that Hashem commanded the Jewish people to place a mezuzah on the doorpost at the entrance to their home, which contains certain sections from the Torah. There is a mitzvah of tefillin, of wearing what are called in English phylacteries on one's arm and one's head, which also contains certain statements and sections from the Torah. When one eats a meal, one has to thank Hashem. When one drinks a glass of water, one has to take note of Hashem, who created and provided that water for you. When one gets dressed in the morning, there is a bracha to be recited, a blessing. When one engages in business activities, there are various halachot, various laws rooted in the written Torah, in the Torah Shebichtav, and then further developed by the Chachamim, which regulate how people are to conduct their business affairs. Obviously, business dealings, day-to-day affairs, must be conducted in such a way that there is no dishonesty, no lying, no misrepresentation. These are all things explicitly mentioned in the Torah. When living according to the Torah, it is essentially impossible not to maintain that awareness of Hashem at all times, day and night. On the other hand, when one lives not in accordance with the Torah, when one is not constantly reminded and informed by the instruction of the Torah, and the word Torah, of course, means instruction in Hebrew, then it is almost unavoidable and inexorable that a person will find themselves living without that awareness of Hashem. And that is why Hashem created so many mitzvot, and so much, the Torah is so broad and profound and requires us to study it constantly, day and night, so that this awareness, this connection, this interaction with Hashem is constant, day and night, all the days of our lives.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org. If you are inspired by Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to get involved in Torah Eretz Yisrael activities in your local area, please fill out the relevant form by going to the link which appears on the screen.